We have had a distinct lack of Empire gameplay recently, so here's a nice Empire replay, courtesy of Calamity versus Strat Game 2 veterans and regular submitters. I guess semi-regular submitters since Strat Game's part, but still, nonetheless, been featured on the channel quite a bit over time. Empire versus Khorne, so let's take a look at what this matchup looks like right now. I would guess a lot of mobile firepower for the Empire, and their idea here is probably going to be to hit and run and kite and shoot and all that stuff. Yeah, we've got a bunch of Outriders, so we'll see how that goes. 4 Outriders there. We've got some Spearmen here for just some support. Empire Knights, a couple of Demigryph Knights, Halberds, 3 of them actually. Plus Balthazar Gelt, so no healing for those Demi-Halberds. Could be a little bit risky, but against Khorne, it's got to do the damage because they themselves don't have a bunch of healing, although they do have a little on the motorcycle here from the Blood Shrine. Got a couple of Marauder Horsemen as well out on the flanks. Khorne Gores and Marauders, Chaos Knights of Khorne, Scylla, and it looks like, yeah, Blood Shrine, and yeah, the Skull Taker's also on his motorcycle, which is very good. Probably one of the best single-entity chariots in the game right now, honestly. But yeah, the Outriders are interesting. Their lack of accuracy, the fact that they can't, shoot 360, does make them a little bit of a tricky unit to actually kite with. It's, a little bit tougher than maybe your traditional skirmish cavalry, but this is the classic weakness, right, of Khorne, in quotations. I do think that Khorne is less weak now to kite than it has perhaps been in the past, but still can be a bit of an issue. Here we see some pretty good concentrated fire there, along with the upgraded Final Transmutation. Of course, spell resistance of Khorne is going to make that less efficient than it would be against other factions, but it'll still be a pretty decent amount of damage on a tough single entity. But yeah, the Khorne Knights just absolutely come in, plow into one unit of Spearmen, and this is the reason why people kite Khorne, is because they're so scary in melee, which ultimately they really should be. I mean, they really need to be like the scariest faction in melee, because that's pretty much their whole identity. Like, Vampire Counts are also a faction that only has melee units, but they're very much different identity. They're meant to be all about the grind, in a way, and I also think, there's maybe some discussion there to be had about Vampire Counts. Their playstyle is not fun, but it is the design, so anyway, we won't get into that right now. But Khorne, on the other hand, you can understand why people wouldn't want to really give them a straight-up engagement, but here, the Demis come in, they do a nice little bit of damage against the Chaos Knights, but critically, they're going to pull away and kind of screen with the regular Empire Knights here and the Spearmen. Meanwhile, the Outriders continuing to just generate value wherever they can, but very quickly, Empire player here is going to get run up against the edge of the map. Strat Game doing a great job of pressuring continuously. This unit of Demis just gets absolutely clobbered by just regular Chaos Knights with that Locus of Fury active and other buffs. That Bloody Onslaught debuffing them as well. So Skull Taker doing a really nice job of just buffing up regular Chaos Knights, which they're pretty similarly costed, to be fair, to the Demigryph Knights, but they don't necessarily have the weapon profile to, you would think, to be able to prevail here, but it's not looking great for the Empire already. I mean, yeah, there's a chance that these Outriders aren't going to be able to do too much more, but he is trying to find an angle to escape out into space where he has a little bit more room to work. That being said, Demis down already is a huge value loss, and they're not a unit that is, cheap enough that you necessarily want to be sacrificing them. Not to mention, the Outriders don't have the most ammo in the world, and they're not world beaters by any means, mainly due to their extremely poor accuracy, but we'll see. I mean, Empire's certainly not out of this yet. They've done some damage, and ultimately, I mean, the Khorne build, once these Knights are gone, is going to lack a lot of the teeth that it would otherwise have. Furies are also a unit that probably can get gunned down here pretty quickly by the Outriders. We'll see. But let's have a look. So the Outriders, yeah, this is one area where that scatter shot maybe won't hurt them so much, but not a lot of melee units close by. Balthazar gets briefly distracted. Yeah, this Empire unit pulls away there. The Marauder Horsemen, honestly, yeah, altogether, the Furies taking some pretty critical damage there. Support of the Furies is important, definitely, at this point, but still 2 Chaos Knights left. The one Demi still quite healthy, basically completely healthy, untouched, more or less. and some Empire Knights still quite healthy. So both players kind of reforming to a degree, kind of reassessing. Oh yeah, the the critical mass of the Outriders in this late game is scary enough that Khorne's having a hard time approaching directly, but a Skull Taker and the single entities definitely presenting a threat, kind of coming out on this flank. And yeah, the Empire will present an engagement here. Calamity going in with the Demigryph Knights. Then also pops the Final Transmutation at the same time. Kind of gives Strat Game a reason not to just run out his units in a big circle or in a triangle, you know, run them away from each other. Gets as much damage as he can, possibly, from that Final Transmutation, and then get some pretty good volleys directly close where he can get the maximum hits on those Outriders. But, ooh, the Demis, despite the debuff once more, that Bloody Onslaught debuff, they're going to maybe finish off Skilla here. He's trying to just path through right now, and Skilla's taking a ton of damage. Yeah, he is unbreakable, but he's down below 1,000. He is definitely done for at this point. And the Griff Knights will finish him off. And that's another single entity down, which is important. Definitely the more single entities that could be killed at this point, the better, obviously. But if we check back in with the Outriders, the Furies made an attack run. They did get some damage, almost managed to rout a couple of the Outriders, but ultimately, you know, with the layers of Outriders, 2 of them scoot, 2 of them shoot, and can follow. That is one benefit of Outriders over, say, like, Repeater Crossbow Dark Riders, right, for the Dark Elves. Similar units in a lot of ways, but critically, the Dark Riders can fire on the move, which means as they chase, they can shoot something, which makes them much better at chasing things off the map. And in a situation like this, where they're running from something and simultaneously chasing something else, they can get some value. But, ooh, yeah, even giving a momentary melee engagement, the Marauder Horsemen are just crazy good in terms of missile cavalry units, in terms of their melee stats, right? Huge weapon strength, huge charge bonus, you know, in proportion. So definitely want to be careful with that melee engagement. But ultimately, Balthazar himself, he's got a pretty good charge bonus, weapon strength, definitely not a pushover by any means. Even with the exhaustion, still got pretty decent stats for a wizard. So, you know, we'll continue to do it. But yeah, now all of a sudden the Empire is exactly where they want to be. They've got Outriders, I should say, out in space, various shooting down various weakened units, trying to finish them off here. He's got the Empire Knights also. Ooh, they're going to get a final charge through the Bestigor into the Chaos Knights, pinning them in place. For a little mobile hammer and anvil. Demigryph Knights with the hammer in the back, that little bit of last anti-large breath that they have. And that will finish those Knights. Blood Shrine charges into the fray, boosting up the Khorne Gores. Also a Horn of Khorne active at the same time. They're going to absolutely clobber through the remaining cavalry that got pinned in that engagement. But the Outriders also arrive to begin cascade of fire in a nice concave. And this is a nightmare scenario all of a sudden for Strat Game. Doesn't have really any mobility left to pressure the Outriders, so they can basically use up their ammunition however they want, which might be to friendly fire some of their own Outriders. But the Final Transmutation also is going to finish Skull Taker here. It'll get his leadership low enough, even if the damage itself doesn't kill him. Oh, maybe. Maybe. The leadership doesn't quite finish it. He's got 40 HP, but as soon as Balthazar comes close, he decides to explode. And then, yeah, that's gonna be game. So, wow, didn't know if Calamity would be able to pull it off, to be honest. That looked very dicey at a certain point, but kept his win condition alive. That is the Outriders, right? And managed to still get some pretty good engagements. Definitely some solid engagements for sure with the Demigryph Knights. Some of them kind of got wrecked there, but ultimately, a very fun game for sure. Yeah, one of them manages to get the value that it needs to. Ultimately, very expensive blocking detachment, but the Empire Knights, you know, fulfill a similar role, much cheaper. But at least one of the demis is able to kind of acquit the whole group fairly well. And then, of course, the Outriders, yeah, I mean, that is the danger of Khorne, is those mobile missile units. And Empire having some of the best mobile firepower in the game. I mean, obviously, like, some of their mobile firepower, in quotations, is a little bit slow in this matchup, but even still, I mean, the Rogue Landship if you could potentially catch your opponent off guard, especially if you have the right kind of support tools or steam tank. But here, Calamity going with just the very kind of classic shoot, scoot, kite, which is very tough to execute well, I have to say. Mad respect to him for managing to pull it off, again, especially against a veteran player like Strat Game, who had a pretty good build construction. Not get kited here, especially by the Empire. I do think maybe could be a little bit weak to something like a steam tank, but I guess that's why you have the single entities to potentially just try and win that fight in the late game. But it is definitely a pretty solid Khorne build overall, despite the fact both the single entities actually didn't get a ton of value in this game. Likewise, the Khorne Knights, I almost expected to get more value, considering they got pretty good engagements against the Demigryph Knights, but yeah, I guess maybe because the fight happened right at the edge of the map, a lot of the demis fled, and so they didn't get as much value directly on their damage as you might think. Anyway, interesting game for sure, and hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.